All right. I suppose you'll have to see to believe. You can turn the light on me.
Oh, this is going to be a sentimental episode. Hello and welcome! Some of you may have noticed that there's a large gap between my last video and this one, and the reason behind that is I was finishing university. When I started this channel, I felt very optimistic about everything. I felt like...
This critic's gonna be a superstar, gonna fly first class, drive a big car, gonna eat a 10-ton Malamar. Nothing's gonna stop us now.
And then those last 2 semesters, oh boy. It was so overwhelming. I tried. I even wrote a few scripts. I shot an episode, but I hated the way it came out because you could just tell in my face how overwhelmed I was. No matter how hard I tried, it basically became...
Nothing's gonna stop me. Ow! I said nothing's gonna stop me. Ow! Don't! Yeah! Nothing's gonna stop me. Ow.
And then I just needed some time to recuperate. But now I'm back, and I want to talk about what got me into film and why I eventually went to film school. People in this field often have that one defining moment where they're bitten by the show business bug. For me, it wasn't one moment, but one person. My grandfather was very passionate about film, and every time I went to visit my grandparents, my grandfather and I would watch movies. He introduced me to silent films, the Universal monsters, and even the Marx Brothers. Like me today, my grandfather had an extensive movie collection, and he kept all of his films listed in a catalog, and I designed the cover. There's King Kong, Gulliver's Travels, The Lost Volcano, and The Incredible Mr. Limpet, which is really just a cutout of Charlie the Tuna. I used to love this movie growing up, and I remember it being fairly popular, but over the years it seems like it's been pretty much forgotten. So let's take a look at it, shall we? Oh, and if you're wondering why this is extra poor quality, that's because this is the actual tape my grandfather and I used to watch. This was taped off of TV back in 1986. And some of these commercials are really 1986.
Will you die for me?
I'll die.
I knew you would.
If you or someone you love loves cocaine, call Care Unit. We can help.
But we'll get back to the commercials in a moment. First, let's talk about the film. The film opens up in the present day, where 2 Navy officers are talking about him. It then flashes back to 1941. Doofy bookkeeper Henry Limpet dreams of joining the Navy, but is rejected due to his poor eyesight.
Everybody can't be a hero, Mr. Limpet. We need men like you at home, too.
Why?
Well, to give to the blood bank, of course.
On top of having a mundane job, he also has a wife who doesn't get him, and she is obviously more interested in his friend George, who actually did make it into the Navy. Henry's only joy in life is his passion for fish.
I wish I were a fish, 'cause fishes have a better life than people.
One day he falls into the ocean, which transforms him into a fish. In the world of this film, anything underwater is animated. In his new form, Henry finds he has a new gift.
Golly, did that come out of me?
Almost immediately, Henry meets a love interest he names Ladyfish. He also makes a new friend named Krusty. Yeah, Krusty the Crab. With a C. Now, since the majority of this film takes place underwater, it's easy to forget that it takes place in 1941. Is there any way that we can be reminded that it takes place in 1941? Any way at all? Can Henry take his new gift and help the Navy defeat the Nazis? Okay, it's a film where Don Knotts plays a talking fish. Do I really need to explain why this film is amazing? There are a few problems, but most of them are just nitpicking. For example, there is a point in the film where Henry loses his glasses, making him virtually blind. Spoiler, he gets them back. Now, seeing this as an adult, all I can think of is, well, what if this happens again, or what if his eyesight worsens as he gets older? My mind instantly went to that episode of the Twilight Zone where the last man on Earth broke his glasses.
That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was all the time I needed. That's not fair. That's not fair.
Some might take offense to the pro-war propaganda in the film, and I get that. It was a different time, so I see both sides. But one of the commercials off this tape goes a little too far. Nowadays, we as a society are hyper-aware of being offensive or insensitive. This was clearly not the case in 1986. There's something odd about a movie where an adorable fish saves the day during the Battle of the Atlantic. You know, a battle that cost the lives of over 72,000 people. And then during the commercials, they actually show a promo for a film about war-induced PTSD.
Sunday at 3, Jane Fonda and Jon Voight star in the Academy Award-winning drama dealing with the impact of the Vietnam War as felt by a returning soldier coming home. The incredible Mr. Limpet will be...
Well, regardless, I love this film, and it's a shame that it's kind of been forgotten. But the one thing that surprises me more than it being forgotten is the fact that it's never been remade. Well, there's actually an interesting story behind that. There were plans in the 90s to remake this movie starring Jim Carrey as Mr. Limpet. And, well, let Patton Oswalt tell you this one.
I got told a story one time. I'll just tell this really quick. Talking about terrible special effects. They brought Brad Bird in when they were doing The Incredible Mr. Limpet. And that's when Jim Carrey was doing it. And they did a thing where he falls in the water and becomes a fish. So they CG animated a cartoony looking fish that kind of looked like Jim Carrey. But it, and the studio was, at that point, that's when you paid $25 million for Jim Carrey, period. That's what he cost. And the studio realized, well, he's live action for 10 minutes, and then he's a cartoon, and we just paid... So they made him... They did this rig where it was like if remember that in the Monty Python's Meaning of Life where they have the fish bodies? So they basically did that. Mm-hmm. So it's a fish with just Jim Carrey's human face growing out of it, and they were showing Brad Bird because they're like, if we're paying for Jim Carrey, we're having his face the whole time, no matter what. And all Brad Bird said when he described it to me, I go, "What did it look like?" And he said, "You would run from this thing if you." Saw this in the water, you would get out of the water and run screaming and tell everyone that the world was ending. Yeah. It's the most horrifying thing you'd ever seen, and they spent $10 million on the animation test, and they never made the movie.
There have been several other attempts to remake this film throughout. One as recently as 2014, with Boyhood director Richard Linklater set to direct, and Mr. Limpet would be played by Zach Galifianakis. Okay, Mr. Limpet was a dorky nerd.
Say, listen, I have an idea. Why don't we all go over to the university tomorrow for Professor Hoffmeyer's lecture?
Lecture?
Yeah, on decapods of the genera Paguras. You know, George, he's going to talk about the mating habits of the shellfish. It's a little risque.
Why is Hollywood dead set on reinventing him as loud and obnoxious?
Do not go in there. Woo!
Maybe this film is just better off not remade. That being said, I hope you guys check out the original because it's one of my favorites. Unfortunately, my grandfather isn't here to see this. He passed away about 10 years ago, but his influence is why I am where I am today. So, Grandpa, this episode's for you. Until next time.